Good morning. I'll turn my camera on in a
Good
second. How are
morning.
you?
Good.
I can't believe that a week has gone by and I haven't managed to reach out to you to book something. I will.
I no doubt. Look, it's a very busy time of year, and that
Right.
doesn't mean it's not top of mind. It just means that there's a lot of logistics that sometimes get in between us and taking the next step in our action, and that's
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
It all works out at the perfect time. You'll see.
Exactly. 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 So, all right,
Okay.
I'll mute myself.
No, please. It's okay. We have a minute while we're just giving everybody a second to get on.
Okay. How was your Yom Kippur?
It was really special and meaningful this year.
Yeah.
I have to say, I mean, like it was just super, super special, which is what I heard from, kind of, I think everybody,
Yep.
um, who I spoke to um, really felt that. Um, you know,
You
how about
know,
you?
the part the part, when as I was reading, who will be burned was really very hard to read that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was really intense.
yes.
Yeah, but it was a it
Also, how
was
many times it talked about captives, right?
talked about what?
Captives. It used the word
Yes,
captives.
yes.
Like, wow,
Hmm.
this is not a new problem. And yet I want this is a reason we're praying for this. Bring them
Right.
home.
Yeah. There was one rabbi who used that in his drasha. I was like, oh yeah, that is very, very true. Very true. Um, yeah. All right, where is everybody?
You're right. Where is everybody? Okay. Okay. Great. Let's see. Where is everybody? Okay, we're gonna get started. We're gonna wait. I'm literally waiting at 4:05. We're starting 2 minutes.
Okay,
Um, and we'll start. Did
sounds
um
good.
did the learning here impact your holiday in any way? Do you feel like the learning here, the Hebrew, the wording, um, you know, the thoughts that I felt like when we were doing the al how many things in these things that we're saying sorry for are straight out of Misios Yesharim, the things that we're really working on.
True. Yes. I'll tell you what, also, for the first time ever, usually I take every single word and I'm like, okay, did I do that? Did I do that?
Right.
And then I ended up reading, I took a book, during the
Mm-hmm.
auction part where I don't
Yes.
like I walk out during that time because it drives me crazy. But I went and I found a book and I was reading this book and it was about kiruv and how to bring Jews, how to really, really do kiruv for people who have lost, who are completely gone. And one of the things that I read is that during during Yom Kippur, it specifically doesn't say I did this. It says we did this because we are one. The Jewish people, we really are one. We are one with God. We're one with each other. We're one. Our bodies are one, everything. And so, it says we. I really hopped at this time. Like, oh,
Yes.
I'm saying to Hashem, I'm sorry for all of us, not just me, but for all of us. It like really
Yes.
resonated this time, you know?
I'm so glad.
Okay.
Yay.
Lily was, wait, I saw Lala. Who did I just see? Hi, Khani.
Let's see. Okay,
Hi.
Khani's here,
Shulamit.
Shulamit's here. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay. Okay. Let's get out our books. And we will get started. Okay. We are on page 193. Okay. And we were talking about abstinence, which could not have been more appropriate before Yom Kippur, right? Who felt the power of abstinence over Yom Kippur? Okay. He's gonna quickly summarize here, and I think, I can't tell if we just finished this page. Yeah, okay, so we're gonna go to page 194. One may ask, why did our sages not make abstinence mandatory? If it's so awesome, right? Why shouldn't all of us just be abstainers? The answer is simple. Abstinence is a requirement for Chassidut, and it's not realistic to expect this of everybody. It suffices for the average person to master being righteous, doing the things we've talked about so far. Mindful self-awareness, motivated aligned action, and cleaning up your side of the street. But Hasidus is for those individuals who wish to advance themselves toward a higher spiritual level, and thereby help elevate the remainder of the populace to a higher level too. And Stacy, this is exactly what you were talking about. There are some people who don't want to step into the position of leadership, who don't want to step into the position of impacting others. Like, they're good in their circle and their space, and that's enough work for them. Anybody who's listening to this, that's not you. You're somebody who has an impact and wants to have an impact on all of Am Yisrael, on everybody in your community, through just being a better you. You know, we're not talking about changing the world by being out of yourself. These are all internal character traits that then come out in our actions. But abstinence is very much between you and you. And I read something very interesting on Yom Kippur. I was reading the Tanya, actually, in the break between Mincha, waiting for Mincha. And I don't usually go to Mincha. And I was reading the Tanya, and he talked about this idea of all of life being about oneness, that God is one and that he is everything, right? There's nothing except him. And that it was interesting because right before Yom Kippur, I'd been listening to a class on Yom Kippur, and that's the point of Yom Kippur, that Yom Kippur is the surrender of the body and absorbing yourself into God's oneness and saying, hey, like, there's no reason to judge me as an individual here. I'm part of you. I'm acknowledging your oneness, and I'm a part of you. And I just want to clean out anything that's getting in between, you know, layers, as the Tanya calls them, klipot, these layers, these skins between me and you. Like, let's clean them up. Let's get them out. I reject them. I only see you, God. And that's who he's talking about here. Somebody who wants to be a chassid is somebody who says, I really, really want to do that. And I want to do that in a way that is also going to have a positive influence on the whole universe, because that's the reason the universe was created, is for the Jewish people to bring this idea of oneness to all of creation. And I want to be a part of that story. So it's just such perfect timing now that our forgiveness was given, and we're embarking on this like close intimacy, getting into the sukkah with God. Like, we're seeing his oneness everywhere. We're seeing his oneness in the synchronicity of what we're learning in our lives, right? And all the different little synchronicities that are happening for everybody. So let's hear what Rabbi Twersky has to say on this. The Ramchal established an important principle here. The Torah does not demand anything that's beyond our means. And this was stated explicitly by Moses in his last words. The Torah is not up in the sky, nor across the sea where it's inaccessible, but very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart to fulfill it. While observance of Torah may sometimes appear to present a challenge, you must realize that it's a challenge that is well within our capacity to master. The Talmud relates that a heathen who wished to embrace Judaism asked Hillel for a synopsis of the Torah, and the great sage responded, "Do not do unto another what you would not wish to be done to you." This is the basis of the Torah, and the remainder of the Torah is an expansion of this principle you must learn. And then Rabbi Bechaya says it's really bitachon, that if you go even deeper and don't do to somebody else what you wouldn't want them to do is you're never doing anything to anybody else, and no one's ever really doing anything to you. It's all your conversation with God, right? This is all really a conversation between you and God. And when you're acting in an aligned manner, you're showing up as a servant of God. And when things are happening to you that don't feel good, that's also coming from God, not from the other person, right? And so we see how it's like deeper, 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 deeper we're going, okay? But that's not for everybody. It's clear that Hillel was saying, love another person as yourself. As Rabbi Akiva also said, and we know Rabbi Akiva was huge on Bitachon. As we've shared throughout our Bitachon journey, there's all these stories about Nachamich Gamzu, right? Gamzu Latova, we all know that. So Rabbi Akiva was one of his top students. And Rabbi Akiva, who said, that this is also for the good, he said in all of his stories. So again, we're seeing that there's this love your neighbor as yourself and bitachon are enmeshed. Because when you don't feel worthy and when you're not feeling taken care of, you're certainly not going to treat other people like they're worthy of unconditional love. But when you feel unconditionally loved by God, you're a source and then a vessel for unconditional love to others. Whereas the Torah presents an active sense, love another person as yourself. This is, as we call secularly, the golden rule: do unto others as you would have others do to you. Hillel interpreted this in the passive sense. Don't do to others which you would not want done to you. Why does Hillel put it in the negative? It is likely that this heathen, who was accustomed to a lifestyle free of restriction on one's behavior, perceived Judaism as being really demanding. 365 prohibitions and numerous rabbinic restrictive ordinances that affect every facet of our life. This is a bit much for someone thinking about converting to Judaism, perhaps beyond the capability of the average person to accomplish. Hillel therefore explained to him that the Torah does not expect the average individual to love another person as much as he does himself, to the extent that he will exert himself as much for others as he would for himself. This might be expected of a tzaddik, but not of an average person. What is possible for everyone to achieve is a degree of restraint, not doing anything to another that one would not wish done to oneself. This too requires a fair amount of self-mastery, but is nevertheless well within every person's capacity to achieve. Similarly, although many requirements of Torah might appear to be formidable to an outsider, Hillel informed the heathen that the observance of every Torah precept falls within the capacity of the average person. And this is also a huge theme in the Tanya, which is that really, what are the skills and tools the average person needs to be able to serve God, and really bringing it into something that the average person what does that average mean? Means of average gifts, average intelligence, average physical, mental, and emotional capability. It doesn't mean average desire to connect to God, okay? Because actively wanting to connect to God makes you above average. In our heart of hearts, every single Jew wants to connect to God. Every single one, without question. And I believe that every single person in the universe, in their core of core of core, also has a soul and wants to be good and wants to be of service. And I think part of being in the time of Mashiach is seeing that in the secular world, all these manifestation classes and spirituality classes, and this rise of spirituality in the secular world, is everybody, all of the years and the years and the years that we've been putting out light, whether they attribute it to us or not, it doesn't matter. It's still filtered in, because in the end, we're not doing it for the credit. We're doing it because it's our mission.
What page are we on again, Lily?
Please,
What page are we on again?
195. Okay. The Ramchal therefore states that watchfulness, right, which is self-awareness, zrizut, which is motivated aligned action, and nikiyas, cleaning up our side of the street, are essential components for spirituality. Those are required of everybody. It's not realistic to expect everybody to advance to the spiritual quality of Chassidut. Hence, the sages did not make abstinence mandatory for everybody. The select few who wish to advance themselves to a higher level of spirituality, however, must practice abstinence and the subsequent steps. The second important point raised by the Ramchal is that although the minority of people may actually attain the highest levels of spirituality, those that do exert a positive influence on the population as a whole. And the presence of a tzaddik, one is inspired to emulate him. How fortunate are we to have lived in a generation that was graced by the presence of Rabbi Yaakov Kamietsky, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Stipler Gaon, many other people whose slight move was calculated to the implementation of the halacha, and whose genuine caring for every single Jew inspired everyone with a feeling of worldliness and sanctity. And it's said many times in the Yom Kippur prayer this past week, how now we feel like a generation empty of these kind of role models and leaders. Who's going to stand for us? Who's going to be our example of how to do these things? And it's really in the hands of every individual to step into that space and be an example. The responsibility of being an inspiration of others is not restricted to outstanding leaders. Every person, we're on page 196, should strive to be an inspiration at least to his children and his peers. One may not consider oneself as insignificant. Our ethicist tells us that every Jew is represented by a letter in the Torah. And if even a single letter is defective, the entire scroll is considered unusable for communal reading. Although our sages did not make it mandatory, every person has the obligation to strive for the highest levels of spirituality capable to them, obviously. Okay. Thoughts? Any thoughts from Yom Kippur? Any thoughts anybody has to share on this? Any thoughts that come up for you? Are we clear? We all on the same page? Okay. The undesirable type of abstinence that is practiced by some foolish people who deprive themselves of even things that are essential for good health, practice mortification of the flesh, which means like self-hurting, self-harm, something for which God has no desire. The Talmud states that it is forbidden for a person to torture himself. Hillel will tell his students that he eats and bathes out of respect and consideration for the person which was created in the divine image. So that's something we want to take into our health journey. The way we treat the person in the mirror is the way we're treating a vessel created in God's image. So when we're talking about abstinence, we're never talking about not buying the best vegetables and fruits and whole grains and best quality, right, meat products and dairy products or vegan products or whatever. We're talking about the stuff that's neutral to not great for us, allowed, but not productive, right? Kosher, but not necessarily helpful. And that includes, remember, our activities, mindless scrolling on our phones. Every time we abstain and we push it off for 5 minutes and we're like, you know what, I'm going to go read a book instead. I'm going to listen to a class. I'm going to go do an act of chesed. We are abstaining. Abstaining doesn't only mean food. It means all of our daily behaviors that we're in. We want to speak Lashon Hara, right? And we hold ourselves back, we're abstaining. We want to take over Sukkot, the third cookie, the second cookie, the fourth cookie, and we're like, you know what, I'll put it back. Oh, but I'm not abstaining. I already had 1, 2, 3, whatever. No.
And here.
We
You're on
stopped
mute.
hearing you. I'm not sure what happened. At one point, I was hearing a clicking. I think, Connie, it was coming from your. I'm
Me?
not sure.
Can you hear
was
me
there-
when I speak?
Yeah, now I can hear you, but I also heard like a banging earlier. I'm not sure if it was your house or Lily's.
Not my house.
Not your house. Okay. Now we hear you, Lily.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay. What was
Yes.
the last thing that you heard?
That that if you take the if you took the first, second, and third cookie, but you stopped at the fourth, you're still
Right.
abstaining.
Exactly. It's wherever you are, just pulling back from what's allowed, more and more and more. Okay, like really just making time for the things that matter. Okay. And Sukkot is really a perfect time because it's a harvest festival. We're outside, we're doing all these things and we're making it amazing. Amazing has to include a space, empty space. It can't only be so full of things. There also has to be space for space. The same thing with having guests, right? You want to invite guests for every meal, but then there might be no space for the family. Where is the space in the space? It's always about balance.
That's so funny. I got an invite from someone and I didn't want to actually say that, but I started to type it, but then I was like, oh, you know what? I was so great at all our meals are taken care of, it was just like, that's how I said it. But what I really want to say was, no, we need one day where it's just me and my son here in the sukkah together. Yeah.
Incredible. Incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we have to remember that just like this media has something positive, there's also creating deprivation. And this is what we have to be careful and remember, that when we're working on these midot, we're working on ourselves. We're not telling someone else, you look a little too full to me. You should do this. You should do that, right? Like that's not a good kind of abstinence. Putting it on someone else. And at the same time, he's saying also that we have to make sure that we're also doing it in a way that isn't hurting ourselves, that isn't creating a source of pain. Okay. And telling ourselves, because we go to our Bitachon, and if we really wanted that thing, that new dress for Chag, God has infinite amount of ways to get it for us. If really we're going to feel like deprived if we don't have it, maybe there's somewhere else we can check in with our abstinence, and maybe we could be abstaining from needing it to come from a certain place. Maybe we don't need a brand name. Maybe we don't need that dress. Maybe we can let God send us the right thing at the right time in the right way. Or we don't need new shoes and a new dress and new earrings and new whatever, like a whatever it is, all the accessories. Okay. The general rule, therefore, is that a person should abstain from non-essentials, but never deprive himself of that which is truly necessary. The application of this general principle to individual cases is individual judgment. We can never judge somebody else. What is necessary for us might really not be necessary for someone else, and what to them is necessary to us is a crazy luxury. And a person will be praised according to his understanding. I know this is hard. It's the same thing with food. Clients sometimes come to me and they're like, can't you just tell me exactly, like precisely? And I'm like, really? Everybody's different. And sometimes you're the only one who can judge whether you needed that cookie. I can't tell you that you didn't need the cookie. You have to know your own emotional scale, and you have to know what you're capable of today. And you have to decide for yourself, you know what? I really, having one cookie was a win. Okay. Like you have to know yourself, and you have to know that really person to person to person, what's necessary changes even year to year, let alone person to person. As much as we're all the same, we're very different, and the same person can be different in different seasons of life. So we have to be willing to do the work to find our own understanding. Although Ramchal reiterates his criticism of those who consider self-mortification as a method to acquire chassidut, he does leave the door ajar to accommodate exceptions. And this is why he said that individual cases require careful judgment. The Baal Shem Tov was an outspoken opponent of self-imposed fasting. Yet it was known that he personally fasted frequently. When asked about this apparent contradiction, one of his disciples explained that when the Baal Shem Tov left his home for solitude and meditation in the woods, he would take food along. But when he returned home at night, the food was untouched because he'd simply forgotten to eat. In other words, he was so profoundly absorbed in meditation that he had not felt the need for food. This kind of fasting is permissible, in contrast to one who feels he is starving, considers himself saintly, and making a great sacrifice for God. Do we understand this nuance here, right? If you skip a meal, or, there's somebody who really just, they don't have a sweet tooth, okay? That's not abstaining, okay? So, and it's not abstaining to make yourself suffer intentionally. Find healthy, sweet things to eat. Find ways to have them constructively, right? You can abstain from things that are maybe a little destructive to the body or a little toxic to the body. Food coloring is always a great one to start with, okay? And you'd be surprised how many things have food coloring in it. Okay. Rabbi Naphtali of Sheets, I don't know how you say that, had no use for people who considered themselves tzaddikim because they tormented themselves. One of the Hasidim brushed by a person who Rabbi Naphtali felt was guilty of such a self-delusion, and Rabbi Naphtali said, "Please have respect for that man. He fasts every Monday and Thursday." Whereupon the man said, "What do you mean Monday and Thursday? I fast from one Shabbos to the next." This is why one of the Hasidic masters said it's better to act as a form of fasting, even if one thereby deceiving others, rather than to actually fast and deceive oneself into thinking that you're a tzaddik. There may be isolated instances where it is appropriate to do an act of penance or self-flagellation, but one should never only do so under the guidance of a very recognized spiritual mentor. Many Hasidic writings recommend that instead of fasting and making oneself hungry, one should increase tzedakah so that the poor don't go hungry. This is certainly wise advice. And that's a great way to check in on whether this is all about your ego or all about your relationship to God, right? If you're like, oh, I don't need half this food I bought for Chag, I'm going to go donate it to other people or make food for other people, that might be abstinence versus, not buying enough for the holiday and acting like you're, better than everybody else who bought luxurious things for the holiday. Okay. We're going to start the next chapter, chapter 14, and now we're going to go into the little nuances, details of this idea of abstinence, because we see it's really interesting and it's really important in terms of, especially for all of us who are looking at all of these things in terms of our health, in terms of our relationship, aligning and mixing our spirit and our body and elevating our body with our spirit. There are three principal aspects of abstinence. Abstinence with regard to pleasure, as we have discussed already. Abstinence with regard to laws, and abstinence with regard to conduct. Remember in the Shar Bitachon, we said, okay, there's Bitachon with you and you and God. There's Bitachon with you and your stuff. And there's Bitachon with you and other people. So this is kind of the same thing. Like there's abstinence, but there's a lot of ways we could be doing it. This requires clarification. In the Talmud, we find many discussions involving different opinions. Some asserting that things are permissible, and others saying they're not permissible. Throughout the ages, halacha has been established according to various authorities. We have the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Law, that is the basic and essentially final halachic text. The Shulchan Aruch was composed by Rabbi Joseph Caro and accepted by the Sephardic laws, whereas Ashkenazic Jews accepted an amended version of Rabbi Moshe Isserles. There was a period of about 1,000 years between the time of the Talmud and that of Rabbi Moshe Isserles. Some halachic authorities feel that inasmuch as Rabbi Moshe Isserles had exhaustive knowledge of all his predecessors' opinions, and his ruling took these into consideration, they say there's no reason to be any more stringent than Rabbi Isserles' rulings require, and even Chassidut does not require abstinence. Deferring to a more stringent opinion would apply only to laws not ruled on upon by that point, okay? So this is getting a little technical. We had a book, it was all written down, and people are saying, and a lot of people feel that if you are being more strict than that book, that is not abstinence. Anything the book didn't cover, okay, feel free to play with, okay? There's a lot of different opinions on this. If a product were to appear on the market, a food, right, whose processing raised some controversy, the Food and Drug Administration may pronounce it to be safe. But what if there are some scientists that say that they're not sure if it's safe? If the food is really desirable, most people will go, it's probably safe. And only a few people will avoid it. If, however, it's a safety of medication to be used during pregnancy, and the minority opinion says it might cause serious birth defects, there will be much a greater hesitation for everybody to use it, right? Why? Because the gravity of birth defects is so serious that people wish to avoid even the slightest risk. The more a person is aware of his sensitivity of his soul, the way it's being affected by something that's not halakhically permissible, the greater is the extent that he will go to avoid the slightest doubt. For this reason, people who strive for chassidus, seeking perfection and spirituality, abstain from things even if they've been declared halakhically permissible, even if there's a divergent opinion. Now, this is really nice, okay? Because some people who, let's say, do not go and hold by the stringency of somebody else, there has been in the Jewish community a feeling of inadequacy sometimes if you are not keeping something that someone else is keeping. And there's a feeling sometimes of being better than if you have more stringencies than someone else. Now we know the better than we already covered ego. That's ego. That's not abstinence. That's not a chassid. Okay. A chassid is somebody who has a spiritual sensitivity. Okay. A spiritual sensitivity is, hold on one second. I'm sorry. Okay. So what we were talking about is this idea of when somebody else is spiritually more sensitive, think about them. They're like a pregnant woman. They have greater needs and greater sensitivities than somebody else. If you would drink a glass of wine and you're fine drinking a glass of wine, drink your glass of wine and be happy. Don't let the fact that the pregnant lady sitting next to you who's not drinking wine is a judgment of you at all. So let's repeat that one more time. You drink wine and your doctor says it's fine. The pregnant woman next to you doesn't drink wine. It is in no way a judgment of you that she is not drinking wine. That woman who's striving to have the healthiest possible baby, okay, who is practicing chassidut, we want to instead be like, is there anything I can get you, sweetheart? Do you need a special hechsher coming to my house? Like, what can I do to make your pregnancy better, right? Because your pregnancy is no way a threat to me, and my drinking wine is no way a threat to her baby. And I feel like this is such a nice characterization of the amazing variety of opinions and stringencies and not stringencies that go across people who are trying to observe the Torah. Any thoughts? This resonate with anybody else? I thought this was really cool.
I'm really taken by the whole thing about how, yeah, the neshama is so the neshama is just like a body, is each neshama is different. And so you really need to, like, yes, it's really about staying in your own lane, and it really helps to right size yourself and not not compare others, not be in other people's business. That's really what it's about.
Right? Like, she's lactose intolerant. Doesn't mean that my drinking milk is dangerous for her. She is spiritually sensitive to this thing, would like to take on this stringency.
Right.
The whole world would take this mindset, right? Now, just because lactose is not good for me doesn't mean that it's not good for everybody. Like you said, the average person does not strive to be lactose free. And we see this in food all the time, right? The second somebody goes off gluten and their life is changed, they have to make everybody else be gluten free.
Right.
I've gone off sugar. You have to go off sugar. Everybody has to go off sugar. Well,
You have a spiritual sensitivity that you're practicing abstinence. For somebody else, a cookie with real white sugar might be just fine. Single cookie. We're not talking about 15 cookies, okay? But like, even in the real health world, we got to stay in our own lane, okay? And like allow people to be as sensitive as they want in the as long and it's between them and God, where that pursuit of sensitivity, if they make sure it's authentic, sure that their side of the street is clean, that's none of our business. Okay. This was a very cool thought. I really like this. Okay. Abstinence in conduct refers to excluding oneself from society in order to be able to devote oneself more fully to divine service and meditation. One should not go to an extreme of isolation because one should relate to people. However, one should seek association with upright people as necessary for one's studies and livelihood, and thereafter one may seclude himself for the purpose of communing with God. And I know there's a lot of people who feel, like, so let's finish this because it's the end of this. Ramchal discourages a monastic lifestyle and urges that a person participate in improvement of the community as well as in earning a livelihood. However, one should avoid associating with people who may exert a negative influence on one's spirituality. We hear a great deal about peer pressure, and some people defend their behavior by saying they do not wish to stand out as nonconformists. We must be extremely wary of such arguments because they are often nothing but rationalizations. We can generally choose our associates and friends, and if we feel pressure, it may be because we have gravitated toward the wrong peer group. It is also possible to follow one's own course, which may vary with one's environment without standing out as a nonconformist. However, if those situations where one's moral principles are at risk, one should not hesitate to adhere to what is right and proper, even if it should differ sharply from one's environs. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to take on something very controversial now. Okay, in Israeli society, you have people who really feel that they need to be a little more isolated, and you have people who feel that it is their job to be out there and sharing and influencing, and you have people who feel like, you know, all kinds of different things and all mixes along that spectrum. What if we applied this to our conversation? Some people, this is part of their journey for spirituality. It has nothing to do with somebody else who feels like, no, I need to be in a more mixed environment in order to shine my brightest. That's how God created me as an individual on this rainbow. And that there is a certain personality type in creation that does better in self-isolation. And having more time, not with technology, not with this, like to just be with God is what serves them best. And that everybody should be allowed to make that decision, not force it on anybody else, right? But be allowed to make that decision without feeling judged that by them isolating themselves, therefore it means that I'm the bad influence, right? Because that's where it comes in, right? I feel judged because you're isolating yourself from me, so I must be the bad influence, right? But what if that's not what it is? He says it's self-isolation. It's choosing the people who are inspiring me in the direction I want to go in. And anything that's a distraction, I don't have to. It's not that I'm separating myself. And then you have people like Chabad that believes in taking it out there and bringing it and creating most relationships. You have people in the Dati world who feel like, no, it has to be Torah im derech eretz. We have to be out there and be doing these things, and we need to have this mix of both. And you have people in the secular world who also feel like, no, I only need to be surrounded by people who think like me. I don't want to be surrounded by people who don't think like me. I only want to be abstinent in the people who feel this way about things. I don't want you and your mechitza coming into my space. And yet we had an open miracle in Israel on Yom Kippur that the Supreme Court upheld the right to mechitza in public spaces for prayer. And they had the most incredible tefillah for Yom Kippur publicly in Hostage Square with the hostage families, full of people who were not observant, with a mechitza so that observant and non-observant could pray together. And at the beginning, there was going to be huge protests against it being separate. And because instead of doing it in a different area, they brought it to Hostage Square, and included the hostage families and said, no, we're not doing this to separate from you. We want to be separate with you so that we can all focus on having a transformative prayer.
Baruch Hashem.
Like, this could have been a moment of crazy not achdut on Yom Kippur. And I'm sure, and I know there were a few little isolated incidents around areas of men going into the women's side, eating an ice cream and walking out. They didn't disrupt prayer. Okay. Like, and there were a few incidents, and those people, again, like, they're shrouded, like they had to think, but teeny, teeny, teeny. The 99% of people, that was not what happened. And so we want to think like these are things that are happening in our time, but we want to really focus on the positive.
That's what Hashem has been wanting from us. That is what's going to bring Mashiach.
Yeah.
That is it. I could cry. I did not know that, Lily. Thank you for telling me that.
Send you, one of my friends sent me, they're in Hebrew, so you'll have to translate it, but beautiful Facebook posts that, that different people who had been there, who had maybe not connected ever to these Yom Kippur prayers, what posts that they shared about the experience and how moving it was, and how every single word was meaningful, and to pray alongside all of these families, like, okay, we've done all hishtadlu possible, time to really turn it all over to the one in charge of bringing home captives, as it said again and again. And so it really made me cry, especially because we had some lost some more soldiers Erev Yom Kippur, which was very sad. But this is, I think, really why we have to have these conversations, and we have to work on ourselves, that when someone else is practicing abstinence, it's about their spiritual journey, not us. And yes, is there probably some judgment on the other side? Yes, sometimes you're right. Okay, let's not sugarcoat it. Sometimes we're right and they're judging us. But that's not abstinence. Okay? That's them need to work on their ego and clean up their side of the street, and that's none of our business. We got to keep our side of the street clean. And one of the interesting things in psychology is they talk about we mirror each other. And if somebody's judging you, it awakens your inner judge. You sense it and you jump in with your own judgment, right? Have you ever been in an argument and you're like, weren't even interested in an argument, and someone else just kind of starts with you, and all of a sudden you're like committed to a fight? But it really works the opposite too. When we're able to notice what's happening and step back, we can deactivate their judge. And so we have to remember that even though it's easy to respond to other people the way they're speaking to us, it's, as he says, within our reach to abstain from responding that way and choose to be the influencer instead of the influenced. Shulamit, you've been super quiet. Anything to share today as we're wrapping up? Okay. Maybe she's busy and she's listening and not able to share.
Sorry, I'm here, but I'm just a bit spaced out after Yom Kippur, and I'm trying to absorb like the nice vibes from the group, but I've not really got a lot to say.
No problem. I just always love to hold space for you. Always have great insights. So good. Take it all in. Close your eyes. Get the good vibes. Chani, Stacy, anything that really resonated, anything you're taking away from today into Sukkot? Because we're not going to meet again next week. We'll meet in 2 weeks.
You mentioned about what making judgments on other people. So the concept of when you're pointing at someone else, 3 fingers are pointing back at you, right? So it's something that you have to do some introspection yourself before you start blaming anyone or judging someone else.
Yes.
So that's a profound message that people should internalize.
Yeah, very, very true. Stacy?
I think I think also I really hopped this awareness of, now that we're one, now that we have managed to reconnect through Yom Kippur, that we're taking that and getting the hug and in Sukkot. And I've never done this before. So I make a cabbage soup on Sukkot, like that's my thing. My bubby's mother probably also made it. Like I make it generation after generation. Now my kids make it. It's phenomenal. And I was actually thinking of my cabbage soup on Yom Kippur. I'm like, wait, what is going on here? Like I saw the connection. I don't know what it was, because that is a hug, my cabbage soup in the sukkah with my children. It's delicious. And
You have to share the recipe now in our Bitachon WhatsApp group.
okay, I will definitely. So anyway, I don't know. It's just great.
Yes. Okay. Have a wonderful Sukkot and a good time leading up to it. We look forward to meeting again afterwards, and keep it up and think about finding that balance and what you're choosing and what we're abstaining and all the things that we've done until now, right? Because it builds on the watchfulness, which is the mindful self-awareness, and then this rezut, the motivated aligned action, and then the nikiyas. How are we going about it? Did we clean up our side of the street? And only now, once, like, again, if you start to feel like, oh, abstinence is getting too much, take 3 steps back and be like, where's my mindful self-awareness? It's okay to work on that. It's okay to work on my motivated aligned action too, right? Like, new shiny thing has to build on the foundation.
I just have to
Thank
say
you.
one more thing also. The cabbage soup has sugar in it. So so I would, and that was the other thing that I was thinking. I'm like, oh, I can't eat cabbage soup this year. And I'm like, no, I'm going to eat cabbage soup.
But by the way, I use date syrup, unsweetened date syrup in my recipe instead of the sugar. And it even comes out richer because it has that, like, I don't know, like a different, like, umami.
Okay, thank you. But like the Sylvan?
Yeah, the silan, yes.
Silan. Okay, yeah.
Sweetened with white sugar in it and then unsweetened. And so in Israel, you got to make sure you get the unsweetened. But again, like, see, it doesn't have to be it could just be, or switch it for coconut sugar or silan or something else, where now you've taken the potential of the dish and now you've added a healthy element that actually has benefits and you're still having the sweetness.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We look forward to seeing the recipe. Have a
Okay.
everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.